Hey, it's Ethan from Zimmer Labs, and this is the Light Hilt, made by Phoenix Props. I just finished building this guy for Scott, so Scott, I hope you enjoy it. Just make sure I got the focus on right. Kind of notoriously terrible about that. Here we go, manual focus, so hopefully this kind of looks better than usual. I'm going to start by just taking you guys through the hilt. This is a almost masterpiece level install. I did a fully removable modular chassis. The hilt is, let's see, three or I guess you call it 3 or 4 piece hilt. Comes with this Allen key, which is actually simple but nice because it's got a ball and Allen, so you can kind of unscrew the screws from any angle, which is, it's just a little thing, but I really like that. It will release 3 screws which hold the top half of the hilt and the bottom half of the hilt together. Once you've got those 3 removed, then you can separate it into its component parts. Before we get to there, this guy is not a stock finish. This is custom weathering. Looks like paint. I didn't do the weathering on this guy. Scott had it sent out to another artisan to do the weathering, and it's a nice job. It's the hilt itself comes just a matte satin finish when you get it from Phoenix Props without any paint of any kind. Like, this area is not painted, and this darkened, you know, weathering patina, whatever you want to call it, isn't there. It's just all silver, and it all has this kind of gritty look to it. Probably see pretty well right around here. It's very gritty. That's just the finish. So personally, I've done these in the past, and when I do the finish on these guys before I do the painting and the coloring and adding a patina, I like to polish the hilt to remove some of this gritty patina finish. Not all of it, but you know, in certain areas. But with this guy, because the detailed finish was already done, I was kind of limited in what I could do. So I did do a few little things to kind of finish off the finish of this guy. So to begin with, this top section here, I sanded and polished, and the point of doing that is to give it a contrasting look. This is, especially in person, but probably you guys can tell, this is a very nice and shiny, smooth, looks like steel finish now, and it contrasts great with the rest of the hilt. So it just kind of gives the feel of this being a different part from this, which makes this section of the hilt look more complex and more realistic. I did the same for the section that sticks out here from the bottom, and again, it just gives it a nice contrasting pop from the rest to make it look like it's a separate part. And also, because it's on the inside, it wouldn't be weathered and pitted. It would be shiny and clean and new because it doesn't see a lot of action being on the inside. Next thing I did was down here. When you remove the pommel, this is how you would access the recharge port and kill key. I did the same thing for this piece. Now this piece is a screw-in insert, and it's a little bit of a pain to unscrew, but basically you want to take some tweezers or some pliers and grab the 2 little indents and use them to twist counterclockwise, and that will get it started. And once you get it started unscrewing, then it comes out pretty easily, or at least theoretically it does. And luckily the threads are not terribly long, so Yeah, there we go. So this is another component of the hilt. And as you can see here, it's got a nice, clean, shined up, sanded and polished finish. Once again, to offset, to give some contrast versus the rest of the outside parts of the hilt. This guy is a pretty cool little greeble section. This is the part that you would see through these windows, and it's got a lot of nice little detail elements in it. In fact, one of the cool parts is this looks like it's just one, you know, die cast piece, but it's not. It is in fact a whole bunch of little parts. Like each of these little poles here, rods, are separate individual rods, and this vented section is separate. Each of these three little piston looking things are all separate, and they come out. This whole thing comes apart if you remove these 4 flathead screws. You can take this apart and pull all these little pieces out, and that's a great thing to do if you want to add some extra detail and extra character to this piece. You can really get in there and, you know, custom paint each little piece, or polish individual pieces, or add some dark patina inside of any of these guys, or even replace some of them. Like this, for example, this graded section here is a nice spot to take apart and add some darkness, some dark patina to the, you know, the inside elements of the grate, so each of the fins kind of pops and looks even more aggressive. But like I said, again, I didn't do the finish on this guy, so I pretty much left the finish alone, with the exception of the sanding and polishing that I did to give it some contrast. Now, to reassemble, you just take your tweezers or your pliers, grab those 2 holes and kind of re-screw it in, go in the reverse as you did before. There are sound vents in this guy. In that piece we were just looking at, there's a little sound vent, or probably 8 little sound vents all around the bottom side of it, and that's where the speaker sound vents out from here, so that you hear it, because the pommel is not vented. So that's kind of a cool feature, because you don't actually have any vents, and you don't see any vents on this lightsaber. It looks very realistic in that, you know, lightsabers wouldn't really have sound vents on them in real life. So it's nice that they hid those, but they are there and they do work. Now, let's see, functionally, we have 2 switches. They are built into the design. This is one, and another one here. They are like a clear silicone, and they're just plungers, silicone plungers that press tactile switches, which are mounted to the underlying piece here. This piece right here and this outer piece are separate, but because they're really floppy and loose, I've permanently attached these 2 pieces so that it's no longer floppy or loose, which is something that's a good idea, because you want to make this section stable, because when you do the chassis reveal, otherwise this top section will just come sliding off, and it'll just be annoying and aggravating if you don't do a semi-permanent attachment of these 2 pieces. The final piece is the blade plug. The blade plug is also something that comes with the hilt from Phoenix Props. So a little tiny set screw right there, which is how you release the blade plug. The blade plug on this guy is pretty cool. It is a solid piece of, I don't know what you call this. It's plexiglass or, polycarbonate, but it's not a tube. It's a chunk. It's a big thick chunk. Now I did do some work on this. This guy is just clear when you get it, and that doesn't diffuse the light from the pixels very well. So you want to rough this up. You just want to sand it down, especially on the bottom. So I took some sandpaper, I think I used 320, and just roughed this up so that it'll diffuse light better. And then the other thing I did was, this top section is a metal piece which is glued on to the polycarbonate section. And the guy that did the weathering finish painted this, and it's a nice paint job, but the problem is, I've seen this done a million times too. when they paint this part, they also paint the inside here, which is supposed to be transparent, which is the polycarbonate tube. So when the light shines through from, you know, the neopixels, you don't see it if this is all painted up inside there. So I took this aluminum section off, removed all the paint from in there, and then reattached it. So now you have a nice clear window with some laser etched cutout circles inside there. So now you're going to get plenty of light shining through, and the light's going to be nice and diffused because of the sanding. We'll just go ahead and pop this guy back in. Just reattach with the set screw, and then one other thing to show you guys. As I mentioned before, this top section is held on by 3 screws. They are these really kind of fine, delicate hex screws. They're probably 1/2 inch long. They look like they're maybe an M2 or an M3, fine threaded. And that's fine, except if you're going to be taking the sections apart and removing these screws often, you know, if you want to access your chassis or if you want to show off your crystal chamber, you don't want to be pulling these things out all the time. Because these screws are really easy to, you know, cross thread or damage, or to strip the tops out. So, and because they're long, and because who carries around, you know, an Allen key with them every time, you don't really want to have to take these 3 screws out all the time. So what I like to do for this hilt is exactly what I like to do for the Phoenix Props Kylo Ren. I get these little tiny nylon push rivets, and what they do is take the place of those screws, and you simply take them and just push them in. Now I obviously painted the heads with a chrome ink paint, and then kind of distressed the paint job so it matches, but as you guys can see here, it's just a little push rivet, and that's all you have to do. And when you want to take it out, you just literally pull it out. Much easier than dealing with screws. And if you break these, or, you know, strip these out or whatever, that's fine. Just throw them away and, you know, get another set of 3. You can get these at the hardware store. If you go to, personally, I go to Ace Hardware for these because they have a really excellent little tiny hardware section with, you know, thousands of bins of little doohickeys and greebles. And these guys, you get there, or I get there, and I think they're maybe 15 cents a piece or 50 cents a piece. You know, they're not going to break the bank. So you can buy, you know, a set of 3, buy 3 sets of 3, buy 9 of them, you're good for probably life. But definitely, you know, pulling these guys out is much easier to do, much more user-friendly, much more efficient, time-saving than versus removing 3 of these little screws. So that is the hilt, I think. Overall, I like the hilt a lot. It's a good-looking hilt. In a lot of ways, the machine job, the CNC cutting of the pieces, the tolerances are great. Everything is nice and sharp. You know, it's very, very detailed, and it is super clean. The only thing I don't love about it is maybe the size. I think it's a tiny bit, maybe too big. This is not Ultra Sabers big, but it's definitely Force FX, or yeah, it's definitely Hasbro FX big. Like, if you've got the Hasbro Kylo Ren lightsaber, it's the same size as this. And I think the Hasbro FX lightsabers are, some of them, not all of them, but some of them are a tad too big. I personally like my lightsabers to be as accurate as possible, and a tiny bit smaller than this, you know. So if Phoenix Props could reduce this guy down by 25% all around, I think it would be really, really perfect. But that's really my only gripe. Other than that, I think it's a really nicely done hilt. Now, to the chassis. Scott, I did a semi-masterpiece build for you. This is a Goth 3 Designs master chassis. Did it in unfinished brass, rhodium, and then I did custom aluminum elements and stainless steel bars and braided steel tubing. Let's see. So to begin with on this guy, the nice part about this design is that it's predominantly metal. So this top section here where the sound card is going to be somewhat permanently mounted inside the hilt. So when you do the crystal reveal, you're only pretty much going to see this section. And for the most part, that's almost all metal. The only part that's plastic is the bottom section here and a tiny strip up the side. So for the most part, this is a really nice fancy chassis that is not plastic and looks, it looks the part. So in order to kind of finish it off nicely, what I wanted to do was do a decent paint job on the plastic itself. Unfortunately, this is such a tight fit inside the hilt that despite spending a solid 3 days on the paint just for this area, I think I did probably somewhere in the realm of 20 something coats between primer and paint. I ended up just having to go with a really smooth sanded primer, because otherwise anything more and the paint just gets scraped off every time you slide it into the hilt and take it out of the hilt. And that's despite the fact that I sanded the inside of this hilt for a solid hour. But it's a tight fit. So it's really unforgiving as far as scraping paint off. So what I did was I did the thinnest possible coat of a semi-gloss white primer to this all the plastic section here and the side that runs up, and it came out really nice. The beautiful part about doing 20 coats, the good part about that is not doing 20 coats, but the outcome, you get a really excellent smooth finish when you do that many coats and you sand in between each coat. If you just side by side compare it to the top end here, which I think I sanded very briefly once, you can see that this is nowhere near as smooth. It's definitely matte, kind of a pitted printed plastic. It's what you'd expect from a plastic shapeways printed part. But the bottom is nothing like that. It's a nice, smooth, even, not too glossy, but not matte either. Nice refined finish, which is good because it matches the rest of the crystal reveal section, which is a nice, very nice, refined, highly detailed, intricate chassis. To get the effect that we got here on the metal parts, what I did was polish all the brass parts. I polished very heavily to get them as shiny as I could, and then used 320 sandpaper to give the whole top surface a dull luster to contrast with the lower surface, which gives all these horizontal lines, makes them pop a lot, because the polished brass versus the sanded brass are two totally different colors and reflect light totally differently. And the same thing for this side. This guy was totally polished up, and then I sanded all the part that stands out. So this whole, wire tree looking effect going on here, and these circles, I guess this is somewhat reminiscent of a circuit board design, but everything that sticks out has been sanded down to give it a nice matte, kind of a polished stainless steel effect with a really shiny polished underside, or the lower side. The rhodium sections, obviously I didn't do anything to. They come, when you get them, these parts printed in rhodium, they come just perfect. Rhodium's expensive because it looks so damn good, but it really is, when you get the parts, you don't have to do anything to them. You don't have to sand them or polish them or clean them or, you know, drill out any of the holes. They're just, the tolerances are phenomenal. Basically just looks like chromed metal. The next internal piece here is another little brass element, and that's the same. I did a polish on that and then sanded the outer sides to make it have a, you know, kind of a contrasting effect and make it pop a bit more. And then I put a massive honking 1/2 inch wide, easily 5/8 of an inch tall quartz crystal point in there. Then the next thing that's kind of cool about this guy is the top section. You can't really tell to look at it, but if you push on this part right here, these sections swing out and you can hear it. They lock in on little tabs there, and that's how you access the SD card and USB of your sound card. If this is installed in the Hilt, you wouldn't be able to see any of that, but you can gain access right through there because of these little swinging crystal chamber elements. And the other nice part is that when you close them, they swing shut and then they click closed, which is nice. You know, it's gratifying to me when things that open and close click shut. You know, when buttons that you press click and you have an actual tangible and auditory feel and, you know, signal that they're actually closed. It just, I don't know why, it just feels better, and it's more reassuring because you know that they're closed and you know they're not going to flop around. These guys are also, in addition to having little tabs and catches to keep them shut, have magnets, little 2mm by 1mm round magnets right here. They're N52, so they're as strong as you could possibly get for this size, and there's one on both sides, so when you swing it shut, the magnets also operate and act to keep it closed. And it's a nice fit. I mean, the parts are really well made, so you don't even know that they're separate parts until you see them swing open. There's a seam right there, but you know, you wouldn't even see that unless you know it was there. Up top we've got a Proffieboard version 2 point whatever, 2.4, 2.3, 2.2, 2.5, something like that, whatever the newest one is. Then a custom brushed aluminum, polished aluminum trim ring to house the Neopixel connector. Then a polycarbonate or plexiglass. This actually is plexiglass. This is just a handmade disc that I made to diffuse the Neopixels. This is a stock Custom Works pogo pin Neopixel connector, and this guy just kind of fits right over, assuming you can find the right orientation for it. There we go. Pops over, and then because the Neopixels get wider at the base, the friction of the width of them holds it on, so you don't actually have to glue it or attach it in any other way. You just press fit these right on there, and that'll diffuse the light from those Neopixels nicely. The recharge port is down here. Speaker is down here. 28mm premium bass speaker. I used one of my JBL speakers on this guy. It's a 2.1mm Switchcraft recharge port and a twist to operate kill key. So you can just turn it off by doing that. Turn it back on by doing that. Nice and easy. Personally, I like to have an actual slide switch, but for this Hilt, it just doesn't really allow for that. So you have what you have, you get what you get, and you don't get upset. This guy has a monster battery in it. Got a 26650, which takes up essentially this entire bottom section. Basically, this whole bottom half is recharge port, speaker, battery, the whole thing. You know, crystal chamber too, but essentially it's just a battery basically. I did try to put one of my 28600s in this, but I could not 28600, 26800. I don't know, why can I never think of that? 28800. Hold on. 26800. I don't know why I have such a hard time remembering that number, but as you can see, it's almost gonna fit in there, but then there's just not enough room for the speaker. It just doesn't leave enough room, so we had to go with the 26650. It's not a huge difference, but this is almost a 7 amp hour 6800 milliamp hour 30 amp battery. In here we have room for slightly smaller, so it's 5250 5250 milliamp hour 30 amp battery. So it's got a nice power plant in it. Nice big ass honkin' lithium power plant. And yeah, I guess that's about it for what's going on. Oh, I guess the only other thing to show you guys is the Proffieboard. I did obviously try to run and manage the wires the best I could, so I did all the soldering on the back side, with the exception of this copper wire jumper that I solder. I always put on the Neopixel blade ground section, which ties 3 different ground pads together to give 30 amps of current to the blade. Each of these 1, 2, 3 pads has the capacity to carry 10 amps of current. I'm pretty sure it's close to that. It's 8 or 9 or 10 amps each. So if you use 3 of them for the blade, you get 30 amps of capacity, which is more than enough for the blade. And then the wiring, as you can see, is all behind there. There's not a whole lot of wiring in this guy. This is the switch connector, and it's something that you can kind of pull aside if you want to actually take a peek inside, but you know, not really important to do that. But this is what you're going to connect to the hilt itself, so that you can mate the hilt with this chassis. Otherwise, this would have been permanently mounted into the hilt and would not be removable, would not be modular. But I wanted to, you know, pretty much do as much as I could on this one, because I really enjoyed this build and I love this chassis. I think Rick did a really nice job designing this chassis, so I wanted to kind of give it all I could on this one and, you know, not hold anything back. So just a simple 3-prong rounded pin connector setup for the switches is easy enough to do. Now let's slap her in. To do that, all you have to do is line up the switches on the hilt with the switch plugs here and this channel, this groove here on the side of the chassis. Because what that does is that groove lines up with the wires that are on the inside of the hilt, so that when you press this up inside there, you don't jam up the wires or, you know, get them caught or trapped or stretched or... Thanks, Max. You know, you don't want to damage the wiring, is what I'm saying. So once you have that most of the way in, just want to plug the header pin connector in, and that's easiest way to do that is to just use some tweezers to grab both sides. Obviously it's kind of a tight area, and let's be smart and put the kill key in if we're going to be using tools around the sound card. And there we go. Just, you know, using some tweezers you can get a good grip on there. Alright, so now that we've got the connectors connected right here, then it's a simple matter of just, you know, you want to kind of tuck them in, and then you can slide the chassis right up into the hilt. You just want to make sure, oops, you want to make sure it's lined up with the button section here, with this canal, this channel right here, so that the wires don't get pulled or crushed or anything like that. And it should fit nice and easily, and you can always take a look up top, make sure that there's nothing going on, like wires crushed up in here, or wires caught over one of those pogo pins or anything. But as you can see, it's just exactly what you want it to look like. Slide it all the way down. Shouldn't give you any real resistance, and then, you know, once it's all the way down where it's supposed to be, just go ahead and retighten these 3 set screws. Now, I put 4 set screws in, but that isn't actually required. You need to do 2. Well, actually, you don't really only need to do 1, but you should do 2. The 2 on the left and right side. If you're looking at the crystal chamber head on, the 2 side ones are the ones that really grab the chassis. This one up here is a permanent set screw. I just put it in and then sanded it off, and sanded off the inside too, so it's just there for looks, because otherwise you just have a hole. And the one in the back doesn't actually touch the chassis either, so it's unnecessary. But again, you don't want a hole there because it just looks bad. So, rather than having a set screw and a hole and then a set screw and a hole, I just did matching set screws all around for the sake of having the thing look good. So now this guy is fully ready to rock and installed. Let's go ahead and put the blade plug back in. And as you can see, it sticks out a tiny bit over the top. That's because of the pogo pins, and so that just means you want to push it down, because they're spring loaded, obviously. So you push it down so it's flush, and then attach, or not attach, but just tighten the set screw here. And that way the blade plug is nice and even and level with the top. There's some really excellent shine through on that guy. Check out the crystal. Like I said, this is a 1/2 inch thick and 5/8 inch tall quartz crystal, so it's a really big one. Really well illuminated. It's only got 1 neopixel illuminating it, and it's that bright, it's that good. And I'd like to take credit for that, but it's not really anything I did, aside for when you do choose your crystal, you want to find one that illuminates well, so shine some light through it to begin with and see how it looks. And then another nice, trick is don't cut the bottom off or break the bottom off or just ignore the bottom, but get a small diamond saw and cut the quartz crystal nice and flat and even on the bottom. And then if you want to, even better is to take some fine sandpaper and just sand the bottom so you have a nice flat clear surface for the light to shine through, because otherwise, if it's a jagged bottom or a bottom that's not smooth, you're not going to get as much light passing up and into and through the crystal. You're not going to get that good of an illumination on your crystal. So the cleaner you can make the cut and the more you can polish it up and shine it up on the bottom, the more you're going to get the light passing through it. Which results in a really nicely illuminated crystal like that. Excellent smooth swing sound font on this guy. Audio track. For each blade, there's a different audio track. My favorite. Can't wait for the show to start again. So excited about that. That red crystal really looks good. Now, to finish putting the hilt back together, sorry, I keep touching this button by mistake. All you have to do is slide the bottom half up. It is a snug fit, but not too bad. Just kind of wiggle it when you get towards the top, and you want to line this kind of groove in this cutout, or this groove here in the bottom section, with the switch area. And slide it up inside there, and then just look through the screw holes and make sure that all the holes are lining up. And if they are, you're all good. And then you can just take the little nylon push rivets, or the screws, whatever you prefer. Like I said, I like the plastic nylon rivets because they look good. You can't even tell that they're not metal. They look the part, they don't stand out, they're not eye-catching in any way. But they're easy to take off, easy to put in. Now let's examine the pommel. Unscrew the pommel like that, except don't throw it across the room because that's not what you want to do. And you get this nice, just clean, polished up metal internal surface, and your recharge port just chilling right there for you, and a kill key, so you can have this twist kill key you can leave in there because it'll fit under the pommel. You don't even have to take it out, just twist it to turn it on, and then twist it again to turn it back off. And the other good thing about it is it's not in a location that you're going to bump it and cause the lightsaber to reset while you're using it, which is often the case with twist kill keys. If they're in a location that's anywhere but kind of tucked away, they can get kind of annoying because you just bump into it and it resets the saber. Through the top, you could see here the diffuser and the blade connector with the pogo pins, I mean. And this is the blade, 7/8 inch with a 1-inch adapter. I'm just gonna tighten that set screw up real quick. It takes 1 and 2 turns. 2 turns to tighten it. So the first blade color, Scott, is, well, let's make sure. I think that's the first one. Is a nice bright blue with a flash ignition. Localized lockup. Nice purplish drag tip. Blaster blocks. The second blade up. This is a cool colored blade, which is more along the lines of the color that Luke's blade was in A New Hope, the original version. And we've got a blue-white audio flicker blade, which I personally really like this blade a lot for this hilt, because this hilt should be blue, but you don't really want it to be the same thing as every other blue lightsaber in the world. So somehow you have to make it differentiate a little bit. This blue-white audio flicker blade gives it some character. Enough that it's semi-unique. Electricity blade. Turbine blade. It goes yellow to white to blue. It's a really fast ignition though. So if you blink, you miss it. blue fire blade. Really intensely bright localized lockup. Nice drag tip. Magenta blade. Excellent smooth swing font. Green blade. Excellent sensitivity on this guy. Yellow blade. Nice blue-purple localized lockup. Nice blue-purple drag tip. Really good contrasting blaster blocks. A blue flash on clash. But also really kind of contrasting pops. Then we've got red with a nice slow ignition. Not a slow ignition, slow retraction. Fire blade. Sensitivity on this guy is really good. And that's back to the beginning. So that's the blades, the presets. Like I said, there's a different audio track for each blade. There are 10 blades, 10 sound fonts, plus an additional 5 sound fonts on the SD card that are not used. But Scott, you can use them. All you have to do is get access to the SD card either by connecting it with USB or just pull the SD card out and cut and paste, you know, the fonts around on the card, and then you'll be able to use the other 5 to the extent that you want to. You don't have to use them, but they're there. That way you get some extra sound fonts in case you don't like any of these, or in case you just get bored with them and want something new. But that's about it. Other than that, this guy, I think, is all set. The sound is great, the battery capacity is great, the blade is nice and bright and even. The sensitivity is kick-ass. The sound fonts are great. Smooth swing fonts have really come a long way, and they're really starting to really just shine. Like, you know, when it first came out, I couldn't even make it work, and then, you know, eventually they started to get pretty good, but now they are at a point where it's just like so realistic. You know, you might as well really be holding a lightsaber. I will obviously include the rivets to go with that, and then of course the screws. The placard and everything that comes with the hilt will be in the box. I guess that's about it. Let me know what you think, and as soon as I hear back from you, I will be ready to pack this guy up and put it in the mail, and you will be able to play with it. And thank you guys as always for watching. Stay tuned. I've got 4 or 5 more coming at you very quickly, hopefully. Essentially as fast as I can do videos. And as always, thank you.